Mike Makes Stuff Patreon live stream available to anyone on the internet during the month of February to celebrate the start of the Patreon, and let's generate some viewership, hopefully. If you weren't with us last time, I am working on a piece for Black History Month featuring 6 of Marvel's wonderful black characters, about a third African and half African and half African American, and I'll talk a little bit more about the characters either in a future post or in a future live stream. If you were following last time, you probably noticed that some things are different here. These two figures, the green one over here and the red one over here, Falcon and Shuri, respectively, were not fleshed out nearly as nicely last time. I went and got some reference for them and sketched out some better forms. And I've also done significant amounts of work on Black Panther, kind of using him as a warm-up throughout the week. I got into some of these really great patterns on his mask here and was just sketching my way through them. So if anything to take away at this point is that there's a lot of work that goes into it before you even start getting to do the fun stuff and the details, and that it's really a layered process. We're still pretty early on in the drawing, and there's at least 2 or 3 hours here. The other thing I want to point out is that I've edited a couple of things here, even from what I had before. These eyes got moved up, and in this nose piece, if you look, this is right across the very top of the nose, right below the eyebrows. And then this piece here, I'm not sure if you guys can't see my cursor, but here we'll use a line to try and help, since I don't know. This piece goes right under the eyebrows, really. And we have that here. And this piece actually goes across the bridge of the nose, right over the nostrils. Might be what his nose would look like underneath. And what I had done by mistake was draw that piece coming down here. So a little bit lower than it really should have been. So now we're going to put it in here. And that was causing a number of other things to be off as well. Like, for example, this piece. So you can see if you look here, it kind of seems like it comes down a little bit further. If I'm consulting my reference, and I really want to come down to here, which means everything else changes. Everything else has to change to accommodate that. But the nice thing about where we are with this right now is that there's just enough here to kind of make things start to look normal, and or like there's something actually going on here, and that lets you start to make more important adjustments. So like, I like this, but I don't want to lose his legs. So I'm gonna shrink him down a little bit, move him up, and in doing so, he gets a little bit smaller, but we still maintain the gesture and keep his head right on that third line where it's going to be so important. So, why don't I warm up with Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur, because I know personally I choke up on figures. I am just, the moment I know I'm drawing a person, I start to doubt myself and I don't do great. So I think it's really good for me personally to start by working on something that isn't a person. And there's like a weird, bizarre line for me where it can be just not a person enough, and I will get my shit together and do pretty good at it. There's a monstrous valley. So I'm probably not being terribly entertaining because I have a tendency to zone out, particularly once I've got music put in and I'm listening to music through headphones, because I don't have licenses for anything, so I don't want to get sued when you know, hear me listening to something. So you probably watched me do a couple things so far. I think that Devil Dinosaur is getting there. I liked some things in the thumbnail that don't appear to be working as well right now. I think this leg on the left looks nice, most of the face. Something with the eyes is going a little bit wonky, and this leg here is it's turned into a profile. It's actually a really nice profile, but it means that his leg is not actually attached. So I may go work on another piece and kind of let this rest. I find that it can be helpful to move around because you'll discover other problems, but also because you will your brain will continue to work on that problem until you get back there. I mess around with my brushes a lot. I use a lot of hotkeys. The eraser hotkey and the magic wand hotkey are right next to each other. This is why you keep seeing me accidentally select stuff that I don't need. But the dinosaur is getting there. And I refer back to the reference to look for cues for anatomy so that I don't do things wrong. But by the end of this, I'll have a version of Devil Dinosaur that doesn't really look like any of the ones in the reference. You know, there's an interesting way of rendering scales that they've got here. This is a really meticulous rendering here at the bottom. And on her shirt here, she's got like the original Devil Dinosaur, which is a very Jack Kirby-esque kind of blocky animated, but you can see he's got like a very human eye, and not really the kind that we're going to be going for. This will probably be the one that I use the most, the one that I like the most. It's not quite an anatomically correct dinosaur. It's not quite nonsense. I may come back and refer back to this a couple times because I quite like that. But let's move around and try and get a couple of things working at the same time. Unfortunately, I don't have reference for Shuri here. If you're following the Ta-Nehisi Coates version of Black Panther right now, which is really just fantastic, and you absolutely should be following it. She's, you know, she recently got all sorts of extra powers, and they're really cool, and she's got a great new costume design. I have my copies downstairs on my shelf, and she really needs to be blocked in here so that we can see what parts of Devil Dinosaur do and don't need to be drawn. But I'm not going to hold up the stream to go do that. So I'm probably going to power down Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur and work on Manifold a little bit. Manifold doesn't have any special costume features. So really the first thing I got to do here is get the anatomy working right. I'm trying to do that without having to refer to another anatomical model, which is probably no good, very bad thing. So I think so far that's not too bad. It's probably not as accurate as I would like it to be. What I often do is work on it as much as I can without a model or a reference until I really need to go and use one to fix some stuff up. If I get a model or a reference too early, it can sometimes be a little bit too reverent, and you're constantly trying to teach yourself stuff. It's not a one and done, like, oh, I got it right this time, I never need to use a model again. So I rough it in, see how far I think I realistically am from getting it right, and then go get reference and edify myself. And sometimes, like we have with Falcon here, I really just needed to set up a model on it, and it looks pretty nice once I get this. This, I think I'm beginning to figure out where I ran off the rails, and fixing that on my own. There's a bunch of muscles in here with the lats and the obliques and the underside of the deltoid that I'm really not super familiar with, and will go and have to refer back to. But I think I can get the overall impression right enough to feel like I can throw in some details on some parts. And these are still my pencils. I'm a little bit obsessive, so I'll do very thorough pencils and then finish things up with inks when I feel like I've really, really got it nailed. series of issues here. One of them being Eden's shoulder here is coming out a little bit further. It's a very common thing where people will draw shoulders kind of like this, when shoulders really are here. Start as part of the chest. They're not tacked on to the chest. I think part of this is because we just learned from action figures so much, and they're like discreet, and you know, it makes sense. But if you forget that overlap, you don't get all the way. And then his arm, I think, should be a little bit longer. This one's a little tough. Alright, so we're getting towards the end of our stream here, and I think we've made some progress. Here's what we're looking at so far. We've got a lot of Black Panther's helmet, but that's going to get some revisions. We've got most of Manifold. There's some things I want to refer back to. And we've got most of our Devil Dinosaur. I think there's still going to be a lot of changes as we move through some of these things and I make some more specific choices. But that's part of the process. If you're a Patreon patron, you've seen a lot of content grow up this week, and my first couple of exclusive stuff. If you're just watching for shits and giggles, thank you, and hopefully you'll come back next week. I will be streaming again, probably the same time next Friday. If not, I will announce it at least 48 hours ahead of time when I'm going to do this. And like last week, you should probably expect to see some progress on this between now and then, just because once I like a piece, I keep coming back to it, to just scratch a little bit in here and there. And thanks again for watching. This is Mike Makes Stuff on Patreon, doing the Black History Month fan art.